I feel like I'm a little late to this story, but the GQ article where they interviewed several people at Xbox, including Phil Spencer, is where a lot of the quotes have come from lately. I've been talking a lot about Xbox and what Phil Spencer has said, but I actually went through and reread the article, and there's a lot of things in here that's really interesting that nobody is talking about, strangely. I think it's because people took out the important stuff like Elder Scrolls 6 exclusivity, but there's more to it than that. That's really, really interesting. So let's talk about this GQ piece and some of the main points in it that I really, really enjoyed reading. Before we do that, though, please click the link in the description, go read the story, and then we can talk about points in the story. It's written by Sam White, and it's from the 15th of November, but this video is being recorded on the 28th, and I want to know what more people should be talking about this stuff. It's cool. Let's get into it. But before we get into it, I have to ask that you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you like my videos. Trying to grow the channel to 100,000 subscribers so I can get that cool button that everybody gets. Thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed this far. So the article in question is called Phil Spencer's $1 Billion Gamble. Again, written by Sam White. And I highlighted a few of the sections that I really, really enjoyed in the piece. Again, please go read it before we go into it, but it's really, really great. So hopping in, and it looks like I can zoom in a little bit more for y'all. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. It's one of those scalable websites. So I want it to be legible. There you go. It's legible and my camera doesn't overlay against it. So one of the first videos I made for this channel was about Phil Spencer taking over Xbox when Xbox was about to die. And it's called The Day Xbox Almost Died. You can go check it out. It has like a lot of views, actually. And they actually talk about that in the beginning of this piece. So in 2017, and the head of Xbox is in a design meeting for the Xbox One X. He's deliberating on a motorized button that would rotate when you put it down. So it's sort of funny just to hear these stories about them considering the design of their consoles and how important it comes to spending. So we'll talk a little bit later about how Xbox thinks about what they spend on their console, but the premise of the article is about this major spend. So they've spent $10 billion. Two of those companies were the company that they purchased first was Minecraft for $2.5 billion, and then they bought Bethesda for $7.5 billion, as they outline here in the piece. And what's really interesting is, I think those purchases were really, really required for Xbox to get where they are today. Minecraft fills a demographic of families, of younger kids, to full-on adults that are making these massive worlds. And then, of course, Bethesda really speaks to the core audience at Xbox. And I think it's really, really important that they made this. So when Phil has to make a purchase like this, he has to go present it to the board. And to him, he says it wasn't that big of a deal because it's about serving the gaming community. So that's not really the point of the story. Now, they talk about some really, really interesting stuff. They talk about the Halo Infinite delay, and I really, really like this part because they kind of fess up to making a mistake. Delaying Halo Infinite, the flagship launch game for last year's new Xbox Series consoles, still sits heavy in his heart. I don't like how we did it, Phil Spencer admits. I don't like that we showed the game, talked about it launching at the launch of the consoles, and then within a month, we had moved it. We should have known before and just been honest with ourselves, Spencer says. We were there not out of deception, but more out of hope. And I don't think hope is a great development strategy. And they reference in the article that Sony launched PlayStation 5 with 3 major blockbuster titles. And we'll get into this other stuff in just a second. Now, I've talked about how I actually think a lot of the Halo Infinite delays are very problematic. And I like to see when people say, hey, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have made these promises and we should have recognized the faults before we launched it. Xbox does that often, where they just openly talk about, this was a mistake. Here's how we should have done it. And I really like that. I find that really refreshing and honest. And I enjoy that quite a bit. So hearing this about Halo Infinite and, the fact that they doubled down on co-op so many times and then later on would announce that co-op would be delayed. It's just interesting. And it's nice to hear, maybe humility is the right word, coming from a massive brand like Xbox, where they're like, yeah, we messed up. We shouldn't have done it that way. I don't like it. So Halo Infinite is great because they're recognizing their own mistakes. They also talk about trusting Phil, and I highlighted this one. Let's read it quick. Between our time with him, we also spoke with Liz Harmon, head of hardware, Kareem Kodri, head of cloud gaming, Sarah Bond, head of gaming ecosystems, Todd Howard, game director at Bethesda Game Studios, and Craig Duncan, studio head at Rare. And the common theme was trust. Trust in each other, the trust in a shared mission, the trust in Phil. It was all pivotal to bringing Xbox back from the brink. Again, referencing that story about Xbox almost dying. And so it's really, really great to hear that the team, they work in tandem, they work together. It feels like this is what the reporter was able to get from the time they spent with each of these individuals interviewing each other. And I like hearing that. I like hearing that all of the teams sort of trust each other. It means that the company is working quite well together and you're firing on all cylinders. I think it's really problematic when you don't trust your teammates. If you're on any sort of team and there's a lot of mistrust going on, for me, that's really, really concerning. When you work at a large corporation, you need to know you have each other's back, right? And if that's not happening, that is problematic. So the fact that Xbox has that going so well for them, it's really, really great to hear. And I think it makes sense. It really shows why things have been going so well for them over the last several years. So talking about transitioning into that position, so Phil Spencer has this trust. He says, I felt completely unprepared and out of my element, Spencer reveals. Imposter syndrome is a real thing for many people. I don't know if I could say I earned it. I happened to be there as probably the most senior person that was still left. He's referencing the time when Xbox was like going to go away. And then they were able to bring it back from the brink, as I've made a few videos about. And he's like, yeah, I wasn't necessarily ready for it, but he stepped up. He said, let's do this and let's keep going. And basically, I have to wonder, like, what sort of situation would the Xbox brand be in today if that hadn't happened? Would they even still be around? It's a really, really interesting question to sort of ponder about. Now, they also talk about the Xbox philosophy, and they talk about Xbox Game Pass here. So the first major experiment for Xbox Game Pass, the service had been in concept as early as 2013. Codename Arches, Game Pass started as a rental service for video games. Something like 75% of a game's revenue used to be made in the first 2 months of release, explains Sarah Bond, head of gaming ecosystems. Nowadays, it's spread over 2 years. So Spencer and the team saw an opportunity. They were like, no way Game Pass is going to devalue games, Bond. So they went out to shop this. People said, no way Game Pass is going to devalue games, Bond continues. Xbox asked instead to experiment with their older games. So they needed to prove that it worked, where the risk was low. And here's what happened. Engagement on those older games surpassed all estimates. So a potentially even more audacious play came to life. Xbox would release one of its own exclusive first-party games onto Game Pass on the same day it hit shops. Sea of Thieves was the first to leap over the barricades. It was a big point of differentiation for Microsoft. Sea of Thieves, you remember, when that game launched, it was the first game that launched day and date with Game Pass, according to this article anyway, and it worked. And that's why they've continued to do this. If that hadn't worked, if it hadn't seen any sort of a success, I have to imagine that we wouldn't be, playing games like we do today. And they were asked about this. If every single person plays Sea of Thieves on Game Pass and we don't sell a single copy, are you kind of cool with that? Spencer was categorical. Absolutely. This was a strategy that they had from the beginning, and it's really, really interesting because you kind of get into the mindset of where they were at with Game Pass. People were worried about it. What if we don't make any money on it? But it paid off. The economics were 100% a success, so it worked. The business model worked for Game Pass. The 18 million subscribers have spent, and they've talked about these statistics for, the public number is still 18 million. It's grown from there. But here's what the article says. The 18 million subscribers spend 50% more than non-subscribers. So if you're on Game Pass, you spend 50% more than somebody who doesn't subscribe to the service. A game's average engagement goes up 8 times when added to Game Pass, and player experimentation within genres dramatically increases. 3 years after release, Sea of Thieves just passed 25 million players, and that continues to grow. Even today, Duncan says, smiling. So more and more people are playing Sea of Thieves. Game Pass seems to be a success, and all of that is just outlined in this really, really cool video. I think this one, I have notes over here talking about the philosophy of Xbox. So the biggest change from the ill-fated Xbox One was rediscovering the philosophy of Xbox. We can't get confused that our primary responsibility is to bring the joy and community of gaming to every one of our customers, Spencer says. Are people going to watch YouTube on an Xbox, or are they going to watch Dune and HBO? Yes, but we needed to be a great gaming platform. Referencing TV. That's not what people wanted. And then looking forward, I did a video about this one not that long ago. Things that are happening right now, that's Horizon 1. Projects happening in the next few years, that's Horizon 2. And stuff that's happening 5-10 years, that's Horizon 3. These are bets that Spencer says probably won't work. There were a lot of articles about that. But here's what Kodri says about it. Kareem, Horizon 3 plays. Yeah, he likes making Spencer uncomfortable with Horizon 3 plays. This process is how some of the Xbox's linchpin features, such as Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Cloud Gaming, ended up becoming a reality. The first disruptive innovation, as Kodri calls it, was with backwards compatibility. After the Xbox One launched, it went to Phil. He says, I've been thinking we don't have the ability to play old games on Xbox One. I want to take a team of about 30 of our smartest people, and we're going to work on it for a year. And only at the end of the year will I then tell you whether or not it's going to work. And Phil, of course, let him do it. Why is this important? The reason I highlighted this very specifically was because they've done it in such an interesting way. How did Xbox handle backwards compatibility? They added FPS boost, they added 4K textures, HDR, etc. It's free. It can be done with a disc. They done with a disc, and they outline those aspects later on. But why is that so important? Because it's not just backwards compatibility. It's not just running the same old game on your old console. They actually enhance the games. There's been such pushback for so long in the industry about backwards compatibility. And then here comes Xbox, and they're like, well, what if we also improve these games in new and interesting ways? Playing Dragon Age Inquisition the other day on my Xbox at 60 frames per second would be a good example, right? You notice it immediately. You notice the enhancements. Microsoft was willing to back accessibility when the industry just started realizing its importance, says Steven Spoon, Senior Director of Development at Able Gamers, referencing the controller for people with special needs to play games. And it's awesome just seeing that market take off and Xbox being a leader there. Steven says the teams secretly worked with Microsoft for over 3 years to create an Xbox equivalent. It took a mainstream juggernaut to get the public behind accessibility, he continues. Microsoft showed people with disabilities deserve to have the same shared experiences as the rest of us. I remember when this story came out, it was a small story. It didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time. But here's the thing. When a company like Microsoft says, we are going to invest in making sure that everybody can play games, and here's how we're going to do it, it sets an industry standard. And you finally discover that there's this huge swath of people looking to get in on playing their favorite games. And it's just heartening to see. So I love that controller. I love it. So this one is straight up from the art. This is from the author. And they say something that I have realized for a long time. Xbox is not here to compete in a console versus console generation of games. They are looking towards the future, and I've made a few videos about this. PlayStation is no longer the competition. After 2 decades of console wars, Xbox has sacked off the trenches and started the space race. Sony has its console and its dedicated games playable only on that box. For $70 a piece, it's a price that Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan called fair last year. Xbox fight is different. With the Apples and the Netflixes of the world, in the battle for time, convenience, and mass consumption, play any game you want from any generation of Xbox all in one with Game Pass. But it's Xbox cloud gaming, the biggest Horizon 3 yet, that can take that potential to the next level. People don't give xCloud enough credit. It feels like Google abandoned it, everybody abandoned it. Here's xCloud coming in. And why is it so important? Here's why. It focuses on the hundreds of millions of players who don't have a console, but the 3 billion players on other devices. Bond tells me about a trip to Africa that she and Spencer took. While xCloud was still in the testing phase, Phil was playing on his phone, and everybody in Africa knows brands like Grand Theft Auto, but they can't necessarily play those things. They don't own a console. Not everybody can afford that, but most people have a phone of some kind, right? xCloud has the potential to increase Xbox's user base tenfold. Separately, Spencer also reiterates that they're doing work with TV manufacturers, so soon you'll be able to stream games directly from your TV too, just like Netflix or Disney+. This technology, I thoroughly believe, is going to be the future of where we're going. There's going to be a massive market of consumers looking to play games on their phones, on their televisions, and they want to play high quality games. They don't want to sacrifice quality because they can't afford a $300, $400, $500 console. But if you've already made your television purchase and it's a smart TV, you just turn on an app, sync a controller, and you're good to go. I think it's going to be a massive market that it seems like some people are sleeping on. And Xbox isn't. Xbox is right there at the forefront, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Finally, talking about Bethesda. Bethesda is a key contributor to all of this, and we get some insight here from Todd Howard about Starfield and how that's going to impact Elder Scrolls 6 in the future. The acquisition hasn't changed much, at least so far, he says. You don't know what's going to change once you start digging in, but we went into it pretty clear-eyed, so did they. Leave Bethesda alone, Microsoft. Just let them do whatever they're going to do. Don't change their company culture. Don't do anything. We've seen how that works with other companies, and it's never a good thing. And then finally, Howard talks a little bit about Starfield exclusivity, which is exclusive to Xbox, and how that's going to impact Elder Scrolls 6. We've been designing, Howard said offhandedly, Starfield's technology base has been providing the next-gen features and tech to Elder Scrolls 6, which, if you do the math, will arrive some 15 to 17 years after Skyrim, several lifetimes in game dev. Yet the ultimate goal for Howard is still the same. I do this weird exercise that I like, it explains. You go back and you read a review for the first Elder Scrolls, and then you read the Elder Scrolls 4, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and then you read the Elder Scrolls Skyrims. You black out a couple things and they read the same. You stepped out and oh my gosh, it feels so real. People change, technology changes, but the ultimate goal is still to make it so that when you boot the game up, you still feel like you've been transported. So that is the goal with Elder Scrolls 6, and they hope that they manage to recreate that sort of magic when they get there. I talked a little bit about some of the kind of genre and taste stuff in areas that I think we need to continue to invest in. He continues. Doesn't mean we won't invest in other stuff if the opportunity comes up, but there's a lot of great conversations happening, and I'm encouraged. This is about investing in other companies, and I believe that was the last quote I wanted to talk about. Oh, reiterating the cloud gaming point, the video went on. My video is going on a little bit longer than I meant it to. Cloud gaming was an idea that first came about years and years ago. We tried it a couple of times and things weren't ready, Codery concludes. I have a number of things that we've tried in the past and either the industry wasn't ready, the business wasn't ready, or consumers weren't ready, but that's all just unfinished business, and I don't give up. Cloud gaming is a huge part of where we're going in the future, and it seems like Xbox is here to stay. So again, please go read this article. There's so much more nuance and interesting stuff in here. I highly recommend you hop on over to GQ and read it. What a great piece. It's just really, really interesting if you're into Xbox celebrating 20 years. I really liked it a lot. And hey, if you like my videos, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when they go live. I appreciate you watching this one. I was reading it and I was like, I think I've done a video about most of the headlines from other sources, not realizing it all stemmed from this one GQ interview. And the article is fantastic. It's really, really good. So That's awesome. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to become a member of my channel, memberships are turned on. Thank you so much to all of the members. There's that join button down there. You just click it if you want to become a member, but I am going to get out of here. That video went way longer than I expected, and I got things to do with the family. So I'll get out of here. I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.